Everyone thought I was an idiot until I was the only one who could unlock my best friend's boyfriend's phone and go through his camera roll. At first we thought it would just be photos of other girls, but turns out he's an evil beast. So we ruined his life. Parents kicked me out for defending my grandpa when they demanded his money. 17 years in this house, and I felt like a ghost. Not the cool chain rattling kind. The kind no one noticed, no one cared about. My parents, well, they had a favorite, and it wasn't me. It was my older sister, Lauren. 19 perfect grades, perfect life, studying at some fancy business school that cost more per semester than most people made in a year. And my parents, they made sure she had everything. MacBook, designer clothes, even a car on her 18th birthday. Me, if I wanted something, I had to earn it. I worked part-time since I was 15, stocking shelves at Walmart, flipping burgers at McDonald's, anything to have my own money. Not because I wanted luxury, but because if I didn't buy my own clothes, I'd still be wearing the same hoodie from middle school. My parents had one answer whenever I asked for anything. We need to focus on Lauren's future. It wasn't just the money. It was everything. When Lauren had a bad day, we all had a bad day. If I had a bad day, well, no one even noticed. She got to pick where we ate, what we watched on TV. My opinion, not even an afterthought. At some point, I stopped expecting fairness. I learned to keep my head down, work, and stay out of their way. The house was nice for bedrooms, big backyard, the kind of place that looked good in real estate photos. But inside, it was just a Lauren shrine. Photos of her achievements everywhere, certificates framed, her childhood trophies dusted and displayed like she won the Super Bowl. I had a few soccer medals from when I was 10. They were in a box in the garage. Lauren's room was like a high-end boutique, floor-to-ceiling mirror, white furniture that somehow never had a single scratch, walls decorated with trendy prints she got off Etsy. My room? A twin bed that creaked every time I moved, a desk I found on the curb down the street, and posters from when I was 13. The kind that screamed, this person peaked in middle school. Then came college applications. I knew my parents weren't rolling in cash, so I wasn't aiming for anything crazy, just a decent state school. I brought it up at dinner, hopeful for once. Maybe, just maybe, they'd consider helping me like they did Lauren. Nope. Mom and Dad exchanged a look, and then came the speech. Lauren's education was an investment. But if I want to go to college, I needed to work more hours, take out loans, figure it out. Oh, and starting now, I needed to pitch in for rent and utilities because money is tight. Money was tight? Funny. It didn't seem tight when Lauren wanted a weekend trip to New York or when she needed new AirPods because she lost her last pair. But me, I had to contribute. And if I didn't wanna, then maybe it's time you find your own place. That night, lying in bed, I stare at the ceiling and try to imagine a future here. Working myself to death, handing half my paycheck to my parents, watching Lauren coast through life while I scrape by. The idea made me feel sick. The next morning, I grabbed a Pop-Tart, barely got 2 bites before Mom, reminding me I owed for last month's electric bill. Lauren walked in, still half asleep, grabbed a Starbucks Frappuccino from the fridge because, of course, she had special drinks just for her, and no one asked her for a dime. I asked why she wasn't paying anything. Mom looked at me like I just spoke another language. She's focused on school, she said. You should be grateful you even have a roof over your head. Grateful? For what? Being an unpaid tenant in my own house? Then there was Dad. I walked on him one night, staring at our gas bill like it was a court summons. He sighed, rubbed his temples, then turned to me. You know, son, every little bit helps. I wanted to tell him every little bit had already gone into Lauren's pocket, but I swallowed it because that was how things worked here. Mom started leaving notes on the fridge. Don't forget your rent, written in loopy cursive with a smiley face, like it was some friendly reminder instead of them shaking me down for cash. Meanwhile, Lauren got have a great day, sweetheart, written in pink marker next to a Starbucks gift card. I got desperate, picked up extra shifts, even took on one of those late-night janitor gigs at a mall. Cleaning up food court disasters at 2 a.m. really makes you rethink your life choices. One night, I found myself scrubbing ketchup off a table, and I just thought, is this it? Is this what I'm supposed to be? I needed out. There was only one person in my life who ever made me feel like I mattered, my grandfather. He lived out in Oregon on a small farm in the middle of nowhere. I didn't get to see him much, but when I did, it was like stepping into another world. No judgment, no expectations, just fresh air, acres of land, and the kind of peace I never found at home. He had pigs, a whole bunch of them. I'd help him feed them when I visited. It was messy work, but I didn't mind. Out there, I wasn't just some extra body taking up space. I was useful, valued, and right now, that sounded better than anything my so-called home had to offer. I wasn't sure yet, but the thought was growing. Leaving, cutting ties, focusing on my own future instead of feeding into the never-ending lore and appreciation society. I had a choice. Stay and be nothing or leave and see if I could finally be something. I just needed to figure out how to make it happen. When my parents invited Grandpa over for a family discussion, I knew something was off. They never invited him unless they wanted something. I figured maybe they wanted him to co-sign another loan or guilt-trip him into paying for something. But what actually happened? That was next-level greed. Grandpa showed up in his usual way, jeans, flannel shirt, and a cap from some random farm equipment brand. The man never dressed up, never put on a show. He was just himself, and I respected that. My parents, on the other hand, were on their best behavior, acting like they were the perfect family. Mom even cooked a full dinner, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, biscuits, the works. The last time we had a meal this nice was probably Lauren's birthday, and that wasn't a coincidence. The moment we all sat down, I could tell this wasn't just a friendly family dinner. My parents were laying on thick, asking Grandpa how he was doing, telling him how much they missed him, acting like they cared about his well-being. Even Lauren was pretending to be interested, nodding along while she scrolled through her phone like she was half listening. I want to believe they had good intentions, but I knew them too well. This was an act. And then right when dessert was served, they dropped the bomb. They wanted Grandpa to sell his farm. Not just the farm, the land, the house, everything. The money, they said, would go toward investing in Lauren's future. Tuition, a new place for her to live, maybe even some extra for a down payment on a house when she graduated. And as for Grandpa, they suggested he move into a cozy little apartment in town where they would help take care of him. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. They weren't just asking for money. They were asking him to give up his entire life for Lauren. Grandpa just sat there, quiet, stirring his coffee. I knew that look. He was thinking, processing. He wasn't the kind of man to explode in anger, but I could see the disappointment in his face. He told them no, said he wasn't selling. That land had been his home for decades. It was where he lived with Grandma before she passed. It was where he planned to stay until the end. He said he worked too hard to let it go for some real estate deal disguised as family support. That's when my parents lost it. Mom started saying he didn't care about us, that he was selfish, that he was just sitting on money that could help his family. Dad went further, calling him an old fool who didn't understand how the world worked anymore. Even Lauren chimed in, saying he was holding her back from achieving her dreams. It was disgusting. I couldn't take it anymore. I slammed my fork down so hard it clattered against my plate, told them they were unbelievable, that Grandpa had done more for this family than they ever had, that they had no respect for him, only greed. Dad turned his anger toward me then, said if I felt that way, maybe I should leave with Grandpa, go live on the farm, take care of the pigs, since you seem to care about them so much more than your own family. That's when I made my choice. Right then and there, I looked at Grandpa. He gave me a small nod like he already knew what I was about to say. I pushed my chair back, stood up, and told him I was done, that I'd rather be with the pigs and stay one more minute in this house full of selfish, greedy people. Mom started crying, not because she was sad, but because her manipulation tactics weren't working. Dad was fuming. Lauren just smirked like she had already won. I could practically hear her thinking, good riddance. I packed my backpack, threw in a few clothes, my phone charger, whatever I could grab in a few minutes. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of watching me hesitate. As I walked out the door, Lauren called after me, laughing. Good luck, swine boy. Hope you enjoy shoveling pig mess for the rest of your life. Grandpa didn't say much as we walked to his truck. He didn't need to. He just patted my shoulder, and that was enough. We drove through the city streets in silence for a while. The lights of the strip malls and fast food joints blurred past us. I realized I didn't feel scared. I felt relieved, like a weight had been lifted. Halfway through the drive, Grandpa pulled into a gas station. He went inside and came back with 2 sodas and a bag of beef jerky, handed me one, and said, "Figured you could use something to chew on while we plan your new life." I cracked open the soda and took a sip. It tasted better than anything I ever had in that house. As we got back on the road, I realized I wasn't just running away. I was moving forward. We kept driving, passing through small towns I'd never noticed before. At one point, we stopped at a roadside diner, one of those old-school places with checkered floors and waitresses who called you hon. Grandpa ordered black coffee and a slice of pie. I got a burger that tasted better than anything Mom had cooked in years. As we sat there, Grandpa finally looked at me and said, "You really ready for farm life?" I nodded more than ever. He smiled a slow, knowing smile and sipped his coffee. "Good, because those pigs aren't gonna feed themselves." I laughed. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The drive to the farm took longer than I expected. The further we got from the city, the quieter it became. No traffic, no honking cars, just miles of open fields. At some point, I rolled down the window, letting the fresh air fill my lungs. It smelled different out here. Cleaner, simpler. Like a place where I could finally breathe. We stopped one last time before the farm, at an old gas station with a single pump and a tiny convenience store. Grandpa grabbed some supplies, bread, milk, and a couple of snacks. The guy behind the counter knew him by name. They talked for a bit, joking around like old friends. It hit me then. Out here, people actually knew each other. It wasn't like back home where everyone was too busy pretending to care. Back in the truck, Grandpa glanced over at me. "You sure you're ready for this? It's not easy work." I grinned. I'd take shoveling pig mess over dealing with my parents any day. Grandpa laughed. "That's the spirit." As we pulled up to the farm, I realized I had no idea what tomorrow would look like. But for the first time in my life, that didn't scare me. It excited me. The drive to Grandpa's farm felt like crossing into another world. The further we got from the city, the quieter it became. No honking cars, no towering buildings, just miles of open land. It smelled different too. Fresh, earthy, like the air had never been touched by exhaust fumes. By the time we pulled up the farm, I could already feel the tension in my shoulders easing. The place wasn't fancy. A white wooden house that had definitely seen better days, a big red barn that leaned a little to one side, and acres of land stretching out in every direction. Grandpa parked the truck, and before I even had time to take it all in, I heard them, his pigs, loud, snorting, and definitely aware that someone new had arrived. I had never spent more than a few days here at a time before, but now it was my home. And for the first time in my life, that actually felt like a good thing. Grandpa wasted no time putting me to work. First thing in the morning, I was out there feeding the pigs, hauling sacks of grain that felt like they weighed more than me. Then there was a water trough, which had to be cleaned regularly unless we wanted the pigs drinking muddy soup. By the end of my first day, my back was sore, my arms ached, and I smelled like a barn, but I didn't hate it. Actually, I kind of liked it. No one was yelling at me. No one was looking at me like I was a burden. For once, my work actually mattered. The day started to fall into a rhythm. Up at sunrise, breakfast at the old wooden table, then straight into work. Some days, it was fixing fences. Other days it was tending to the small vegetable patch out back. Grandpa showed me everything. How to tell when a pig was sick, the best way to stack hay so it wouldn't collapse, even how to drive the old tractor. I had never learned so much in such a short time, and for once, I actually enjoyed it. This wasn't like school where everything felt pointless. Every skill I picked up here had a real immediate purpose. But as much as I liked farm life, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more I could do. The farm was old school, running the same way it had for decades. Grandpa made just enough to get by, selling livestock and a few crops at the local market. But I couldn't help but wonder, was there a way to make this place thrive instead of just survive? I started paying attention to the other farms in the area. Some had big roadside stands selling fresh produce. Others offered farm experiences where tourists could milk cows or pick apples. A few even had small bed and breakfast setups, letting city folks stay for the weekend to escape the hustle. It was clear that farming wasn't just about food anymore. It was about business. One night, after a long day at work, I was scrolling through YouTube when I stumbled across a video that changed everything. It was about truffles, those rare underground mushrooms that fancy chefs lose their minds over. I had heard of them before, but I never really thought about where they came from. Turns out, truffles weren't just some European thing. They actually grew right here in Oregon, and they were worth a fortune. The numbers blew my mind. Depending on the type, truffles could sell for anywhere from $350 to $1,500 per kilogram. Some farms had entire businesses built around them, using trained dogs to sniff them out in the wild. Others cultivated them on their own land, growing them alongside certain trees in a process that took years but paid off big time. I had to know more. I spent the next few days diving deep into the world of truffles, how they grew, where to find them, what kind of conditions they needed. Everything I read pointed to one thing. Grandpa's farm was in the perfect location for truffles. We had the right soil, the right climate, and plenty of trees that could host them. It was like the opportunity had been sitting here the whole time, just waiting for someone to notice. The more I learned, the more excited I got. This wasn't just some random idea. This could be real. This could be a way to turn the farm into something bigger, something profitable. I wasn't sure if Grandpa would go for it. He was old school, and this was definitely not traditional farming. But when I finally told him about it, I saw something in his face I had expected: interest, real genuine interest. For the next few days, I kept digging deeper into research. I learned that truffles take years to cultivate but can be found naturally in the wild if you know where to look. That's when I had another realization. Grandpa's land had been mostly untouched for years. There was a real possibility that truffles were already growing there, just waiting to be discovered. One evening, While sitting on the porch after a long day of work, I decided to bring it up again. I laid out everything I had learned from the conditions needed to how much money we could make if we did it right. Grandpa listened quietly, sipping his coffee. Then finally, he nodded. He told me that change was a bad thing, but had to be done right. If we were going to do this, we need to be smart about it. That meant testing the land, finding the right partners, and making sure we weren't diving into something blind. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was onto something big. And this time, I wasn't just following someone else's plan. I was creating my own future. The more I read about truffles, the more convinced I became that this wasn't just some wild idea. It was a real opportunity. But I needed more than just online research. I needed to see it in action, talk to someone who was already doing it. That's when I found out about a farm a couple of hours away that specialized in truffles. They had been in the business for years, and from what I could tell, they were making serious money. I reached out, expect and get ignored or brushed off. Instead, they got back to me within a day, saying I could come by and talk to the owner. That was all I needed. The next morning, I was up before sunrise, hopped in Grandpa's old truck, and hit the road. When I arrived, I was surprised by what I saw. This wasn't some rundown farm barely making ends meet. It was modern, organized, and clearly profitable. Large greenhouses, top-of-the-line equipment, and workers who move with the kind of purpose you don't see on struggling farms. Money was definitely in this business. I pulled into the lot and got out, taking in everything around me. Before I could go looking for the owner, a guy who looked like he worked there walked over and asked what I needed. When I told him I had set up a meeting, he scratched his head and said the owner was in town for business. But then he added something else. The owner's daughter was around, and she knew just as much about the operation as he did. I wasn't expecting much. Maybe a friendly but disinterested farm girl who'd give me a few facts and send me on my way. But then she walked up, and my brain nearly short-circuited. She was gorgeous, not in the overdone, Instagram-filtered way, but naturally beautiful. Sun-kissed skin, deep brown eyes, and a kind of confidence that made it clear she wasn't just here to smile and nod. She introduced herself, Emma. Just Emma. No pretentious attitude. No fake enthusiasm. Just a genuine down-to-earth person who happened to know everything about truffle farming. We started talking, and before I knew it, an hour had passed. She walked me through everything. How they train pigs to sniff out truffles, the markets they sold to, the costs involved in getting started. She didn't sugarcoat it. The business had huge potential, but it wasn't easy. It took patience, investment, and a willingness to fail before getting it right. She led me around the farm, showing me different setups. Some areas were dedicated to growing truffles under trees they had planted years ago, while others were designed for training the pigs. She even introduced me to one of them, an old chubby pig named Daisy, who apparently had the best nose on the farm. Daisy sniffed at my boots before snorting and waddling away unimpressed. Emma laughed, saying that meant I wasn't hiding any truffles on me. I pretended not to be offended. I soaked in every word, taking mental notes on things I hadn't even considered. By the time we wrapped up, I wasn't just excited about truffles. I was excited about the idea of seeing her again. Before I left, we exchanged numbers. She told me people around here looked out for each other, and if I ever needed advice, she'd be happy to help. I wasn't sure if she was just being polite, but something about the way she said it felt genuine. On the way back, I stopped at a gas station to grab a drink and check my notes. My brain was spinning with possibilities. The cost, the timeline, the risks, it was all a lot. But for the first time in a long time, I actually felt like I had a plan. Not just a daydream, but something real, something I could build. By the time I pulled into the farm, Grandpa was waiting on the porch rocking his old chair like he had all the time in the world. I told him everything. The farm, the process, the costs. I expected some hesitation, maybe even doubt. Instead, he nodded, thinking it over. Then to my surprise, he said he was in. He didn't have much, but he was willing to take out a loan if it meant giving us a real shot. That's when I knew we weren't just playing around. We were really doing this. Buying everything needed for the truffle business felt like assembling pieces of a giant puzzle. Every day, I had deliveries coming in, special store containers for truffles, equipment for properly curing and preserving them, even a few books on advanced cultivation techniques. It wasn't just about finding the truffles. It was about making sure they were stored and sold at the highest quality possible. Emma was there through all of it. She helped me set up the storage room, explained the details of quality grading, and even taught me a few tricks about handling truffles so they wouldn't lose their value. She spent more time at the farm than I expected, and I wasn't complaining. But one problem still remained: finding a trained truffle hunting pig. The best pigs weren't cheap. I searched online and found that a well-trained truffle pig could cost thousands of dollars. It wasn't something I could afford just yet. I called Emma to ask if she had any ideas. She told me to give her a little time. She'd talk to her dad and see what they could do. A few days later, I heard the sound of an engine rolling up the driveway. I walked outside just in time to see Emma pulling up in a blue Ford F-150, a playful grin on her face. In the back of the truck, standing calmly in a crate, was a large brown pig. She hopped out and leaned against the truck. "Got you a little something?" I couldn't believe it. She and her dad had gotten me a fully trained truffle pig. She opened the crate, and the pig stepped down like she already owned the place. Emma laughed, explaining that her name was Maggie and that she had been trained since she was a piglet to sniff out truffles. It was their gift to me, an investment in my success. The next morning, I took Maggie out to the land behind Grandpa's house, 5 full hectares of untouched forest. I had no idea if we'd actually find anything, but I figured it was worth a shot. Maggie sniffed around, circling trees, digging here and there, but finding nothing at first. Then after about an hour, she froze near the base of an old oak tree. She started pawing at the dirt, and when I got closer, I saw it. My first truffle, dark, round, and unmistakable. I picked it up, holding it in my hand like a piece of treasure. It wasn't just about the money. It was about proving that this idea wasn't crazy, that all the work, all the planning was leading somewhere. Emma was there when I got back. I barely had time to show her before she pulled out her phone and started making calls. Within a few days, she had introduced me to wholesale buyers, and my first month in the business brought in over $5,000. And that was just from searching less than 10% of our land. With that money, I reinvested in the farm. I bought 2 more trained pigs and hired a couple workers to help expand the operation. Emma helped me get all the legal paperwork in order. And before I knew it, I wasn't just some guy searching for truffles. I was the owner of a legitimate business. A year passed, and the business exploded. We made over $500,000 in profit, and that was just the beginning. I expanded operations, bought more land, and built proper facilities. I had gone from being a guy with a crazy idea to running one of the most successful truffle farms in the state. During that time, Emma and I grew closer. It wasn't just about work anymore. We spent every moment we could together. In one evening, under the stars, I proposed. She said yes. 6 months later, we got married. The wedding was small but perfect, filled with friends, neighbors, and other farmers who had supported us along the way. My family wasn't there. I didn't invite them. 3 years later, our business had grown into a multi-million-dollar operation. We built a modern facility on the farm, added new technology, and even started a side business offering truffle hunting experiences for tourists. We had it all: a thriving business, a beautiful home near the lake, and Grandpa living with us to see it all happen. Then one morning, everything changed. Grandpa passed away in his sleep. He was 88 years old. Even though he had lived a full life, it still hit me hard. He had been my only real family. The one person who had believed in me when no one else did. I had to call my parents. Even though we hadn't spoken in years, I knew they needed to be told. When I finally got them on the phone, their reaction was cold. No grief. No sadness. Just one question. When is the reading of the will? That's when I knew. They didn't care about Grandpa. They only cared about what they might get from him. And that's where the real battle was about to begin. The day of the reading arrived faster than I expected. My parents and Lauren showed up, clearly expecting something